Hi, everyone. It's Shelley, and welcome to episode 41 of Snowed, the Michael Snow is a Fraud story. So, I have another guest spot today, and I'd like to introduce you to Shelley.
Hi everyone, I am Shelley. Throughout Shelley's videos, you will have noticed her call me the other Shelley or Shelley from BC. Yeah, that would be me. So I met Mr. Snow online on a dating site in June of 2022. It was a simple message from him, beautiful lady. And that's how it started. From then, we started talking daily, we exchanged numbers and were texting. And at one point, probably a week in, he asked me if I found him attractive. And I said, yeah, I guess so, sure. I said, how about me? How am I doing so far? And he said, I think we would be amazing friends. Well, I wasn't looking for friendship at that point, so I deleted him. I deleted him on the app, I deleted his phone number, I deleted all of our conversations, and sure enough, there he was the next day, messaging me again. So I continued entertaining the conversation and ended up going on vacation with my daughter for a week, and throughout that time, he continued messaging me. So on the 8th of July of 2022, he invited me to come and visit him. He was with his truck and he was parked in Chilliwack and asked me to stop by and watch a movie. So I drove out to Chilliwack from where I was living, which was about 20-30 minutes away. And at his truck with him was none other than the farmer's wife, Cindy. I got to meet her that night, and it was that night that he explained to me that Cindy and Denise were actually a couple, and so I had nothing to worry about with her being in the truck with him because he wasn't her type, obviously. So I spent the evening watching movies with them on the 8th. I went and did the same on the 9th, except that night we were in Hope instead of Chilliwack because he was on his way out of town. I stayed the night in the truck, and the next morning went home. That evening, he had been texting me again, and I finally had enough information about him to actually Google his name. So on Googling his name, I let him know that I had just found out some information about him, to which he replied, there are two sides to every story. So I told him that I would like to hear his side of the story. He said he might tell me, he might not. We continue talking, and another week goes by, and he asks me to meet him for lunch. So we went for lunch, and he told me his story. And I'm not going to lie, it was convincing. He had me believing that he was completely innocent in this whole thing, and that he only pled guilty to the charges against him to spare his family the agony of a trial. The next day after that, he texted me and asked me if I was available for about a week to go on a trip with him. So I quickly arranged to have somebody look after my dog. I made sure my daughters were going to be okay by themselves for a few days, and I met him at his truck, and off we went to Alberta. We spent the first night in Banff, and in true Mike style, he drank a full 26 of Crown Royal and missed his drop-off at Airdrie the next morning, which meant we were an extra couple of days late getting back to BC. So going back to his dating app when we first met, he portrayed himself as ex-military, a motorcycle enthusiast, an engineer, a business owner. We spoke more about that throughout our texting process, and he did confirm to me that he was indeed a U.S. Marine. He spent time in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Somalia. He learned fixed-wing aircraft when he was 14 and started flying rotary aircraft when he was 22. The military taught him. Over his experience in the military, he said he's spent time in 26 countries. Honestly, he's got scars that match his description of being shot down in Iraq. So on this trip in his truck to Alberta is when he started talking to me about money. He told me that he had 5 trucks on the road with R.R. Plett. He drove one of them as an owner-operator, and he had 4 others with employees that were working for him. On this trip, he showed me pay statements indicating that he was making a lot of money off of the trucks that he was operating on behalf of the company. He also talked to me a lot about passive income that he had, and he really felt like I should be involved in that as well. So he was talking about storage units and rental buildings and things like that. One night we were in his truck watching movies, and he showed me a deposit for $3,000 that he said was a close associate of Shelley's, who had been collecting rent money for him. Turns out the money was from that trucking business the two of them started together. So that was the rest of the road trip, basically him talking about his investments, his money, how much he had, and how much he could do for me if I would give him my money to invest for me. About 2 weeks later, he and I went on a road trip on the August long weekend throughout the mountains in BC. A friend of his, who's been mentioned previously, Rob, joined us on that trip. And that was the first time that I spent my own money for Mike. He had this habit of getting up in the morning and, oh, babe, can you settle up with the hotel while I go pack up the car? I'll pay you back later. Well, later never happened. That was the August long weekend 2022. The trip ended. I was at home. Hey, Mike, where's my money? Oh, my accounts are frozen. I've sent too many e-transfers today. I'll pay you tomorrow. Well, like they say, tomorrow never comes. So he went back to Saskatchewan on a road trip, and it wasn't long after that I found out that he was with Shelley. And the story that he gave me about her is that he had been single for about 6 years. They had split up in 2018. He hadn't really dated much since. And that because she was a wealthy author, she owned a number of rental properties in Moose Jaw, and that he just happened to rent one of them from her. So it was on this trip with Shelley that Mike was in an accident with another vehicle and was fired for workplace violence. I was the lucky one because I was in BC where his truck ended up, who got the task of cleaning out his truck for him. You know, babe, it would alleviate so much stress if you could do that for me. Okay, dear. So I did. 45-degree weather, heat stroke, 2 days, but it took me a while, loaded everything up, took it back to my place, where he met me with Cindy, the farmer's wife, and Denise, who drove him out to BC to pick up his stuff. I didn't find out until later that Denise was actually in a relationship with Mike, and he broke up with her in my kitchen in order to save face with me and not throw me off to the fact that he was actually seeing her at the same time he was seeing me.
Stay tuned for episode 42, where you're going to hear a little bit more of Shelley's experiences.